Hard Passage North, written by Martin Hicks, narrated by John Delino Ziegler, Jr. Prologue. The August morning was growing towards noon, and the already high temperature was climbing steadily as the Ogeechee Volunteer Rifles, in company with the rest of Brigadier General Robert Toombs's brigade of Georgia Infantry, converged on the Virginia Central Railroad depot in Richmond's Shockoe Bottom. The long column of sweating men came tramping up 17th Street toward the big Seabrook warehouse, to wheel off the left onto Grace Street where the depot lay, only to come, almost at once, to an untidy halt with their further progress blocked by a multitude of already arrived soldiers. File after file of idle men extended along the street, almost from the intersection itself towards the depot building, where a tangle of halted wagons had also stalled. The arriving men craned their necks, gazing over the heads of those waiting in front of them on Grace Street, only to see still further columns of troops stretching away from the depot building in other directions. From their other side, still more soldiers were approaching along Grace Street itself, threatening to completely choke the approaches, which were already steadily turned into a confusion of men, activity, and noise. Toombs's regiments were rested at ease on the shouts of their officers and sergeants, to gaze around some more as it became increasingly apparent to them that if there had been such a thing as a timetable for getting General James Longstreet's command away from the city and up the Virginia Central track to Gordonsville, then it already seemed to have run into problems. The new arrivals could readily see that this was no small matter of a brigade or two of men reaching the railroad simultaneously to wait around briefly for the arrival of the trains to carry them north. Rather, from the numbers already visible, this situation had the makings of a pretty major foul-up. Not only the depot and its adjacent streets were clogged by troops and vehicles, but still more groups of men had been dismissed from their ranks to occupy the vacant ground that lay along past the depot between the railroad and Shockoe Creek, spreading the congestion still further, and, as more and more units of infantry arrived, the depot and its environs seemed to have become an impromptu marshaling point for a substantial portion of General Robert E. Lee's army. Many of the waiting soldiers lounged or sat, their attitudes and poses indicating that they had been there for some time. A few more fortunate ones had found precious patches of shade, while others had simply stretched out to drowse in whatever space they had been able to settle themselves in. But the huge majority of them stood, sweltering in the prickly heat of the still ascending sun. A scattering of the more active or inquisitive among them had retained sufficient energy to continue pacing around their formations in groups, seeking whatever enlightenment they could find about this latest chaos of a troop movement that the staffers and the railroad officials had jointly managed to cook up. But whether the waiting men stood, lounged, sat, lay, or prowled, they also scratched, persistently and vainly, particularly at armpits and crotches, which were the principal gathering places of the almost universal army affliction of body lice. From enlisted men to colonels and generals, almost everyone in the Army of Northern Virginia had their crop of graybacks, and all along those lines, and among the other waiting groups, fingers clawed at clothing, many men doing it almost subconsciously, to gain what momentary relief was possible from the exasperating itch. Although most of them recognized that scratching simply antagonized the creatures, they still tended to do it, maybe on the premise that since the lice gave men little peace, the men would give them none either. The air all around the creek bottom was filled with a hubbub of noises from the steadily growing crowds of soldiers. Above all else, there came a buzz, the collective talk of many hundreds of men, filling the air with complaints, wisecracks, and general chatter, with the overall sound being reminiscent of the humming of a gigantic nest of bees. Intermingled with this rang the shouts of officers or train masters and the exasperated bellows of sergeants. Horses stamped and snorted or occasionally whinnied, while mules brayed. The harness of their arriving or departing vehicles creaked, and wheels and axles rumbled or squeaked, and all of this mixed in with the less obtrusive sounds, like the persistent tinkling clink of bayonet frogs or tin cups on canteens as more men arrived, or those already here fidgeted and moved around. From the depot itself came a chorus of further noises, the screech of train whistles, the harsh hiss of escaping steam, the slamming of doors, and the clanking and jolting of wagons and cars as trains arrived and left. Hanging also in the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?